Hello, my name is Kirsten Kenyon, and I'm very pleased to provide you with an overview of the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency's Nonprofit Security Grant Fund program. I've been the director of the Office of Research, Evaluation, and Strategic Policy Development at PCCD for a decade now, and my office has been responsible for the administration of the Nonprofit Security Grant Fund program since its creation. For this presentation, I'm first going to give you a little overview of PCCD, who we are and what we do. And then I'm going to get into the meat of the Nonprofit Security Grant Fund program itself, and then wrap things up with some additional state resources that you may want to consider as you explore improving security for your organization. The Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, or PCCD, was created in 1978 as the state's justice planning and policy making agency. We're headed by a 48-member commission or body that formally votes on all the grants and policies that our agency administers. Our main issue areas include criminal justice, juvenile justice, victim services, and most recently, public safety, including school safety. Although we support a ton of different programs, our main core functions can be boiled down to three main things. First, we administer victims' compensation, which for those of you that don't know, if you're a victim of a crime in Pennsylvania, you may be eligible to apply to us to be reimbursed for certain expenses incurred as a result of that crime. And that can include counseling and therapy, crime scene cleanup, medical expenses not covered by insurance, and other items. Our agency is also responsible for a wide variety of training programs. We provide training for constables, sheriffs and deputy sheriffs, county adult probation and parole officers, and school employees. We also provide technical assistance for a wide variety of programs and initiatives. But by far, our biggest function is the administration of grants. We may not be on par with the amount of funding as some other state agencies administer, but as a small agency with around 150 employees in total, it is impressive how much funding we do issue annually. And how much is that? Well, we've really picked up steam in grant issuance over the past few years. In fact, we've awarded well over $1 billion in just the past 5 years to over 5,500 individual grants throughout the state to schools, other state agencies and associations, victim service providers, law enforcement, municipalities, nonprofit organizations, and community groups, including the faith-based community. Some specific funding streams that have been allocated to us through the state budget that address security needs include the School Safety and Security Fund, which supports physical security enhancements and behavioral health improvements for public schools. For fiscal year 24-25, this grant program was recently allocated $100 million to distribute to school districts, charter schools, intermediate units, and area career and technical centers. Another line item in the state budget that we administer is the Targeted School Safety Grant Program for non-public schools, which until December of 2023 was administered previously through the PA Department of Education. We administered this grant program for the K-12 non-public schools earlier in 2024, and for fiscal year 24-25, a full $19.7 million was allocated for this grant program. I would note that if you're a faith-based institution with an affiliated non-public school, this may be another funding opportunity for you to look into through PCCD to address security needs for your organization. And finally, there is the Nonprofit Security Grant Fund program, which has been in existence for the past 5 years. Historically, this program received $5 million annually from the General Assembly, but unfortunately, with the troubling increase in bias and hate crimes happening in the state, Governor Shapiro proposed and received a major investment of $10 million in the fiscal year 24-25 budget. This is an amount that's more than double than normal. And with that $10 million in mind, that's a nice segue into talking about Act 83 of 2019, which formally established the Nonprofit Security Grant Fund program at PCCD. I will note that PCCD's nonprofit grants should not be confused with the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency's, or PEMA's, Nonprofit Security Grant Fund program, which I'll talk about a little more later. Both programs have the same name, but we are different agencies, and the application process is a bit different for both. So first off, who is eligible for PCCD's Nonprofit Security Grant Fund program? Not to get all technical on you, but Act 83 states that eligible applicants are nonprofit organizations, which are 501c3s based in Pennsylvania, who principally serve individuals, groups, or institutions that are included within a bias motivation category for single bias hate crime incidents as identified by the FBI's Hate Crime Statistics publication. This means that if you are a 501c3 nonprofit based in Pennsylvania, or if you're a church based in Pennsylvania, or a synagogue or a mosque that meets the IRS's nonprofit status definition, and your organization primarily serves or is made up of members who have either experienced hate crimes or biased or could potentially be targeted for such hate crimes, you are eligible to apply for funding to support security enhancements for your organization in order to make your building or meeting space safer for your congregants or members. For some actual examples, we have funded Jewish synagogues and schools in the past, Muslim mosques and schools, African American churches, progressive Christian churches, Catholic churches and schools, organizations representing LGBTQ clientele, women's service groups, and others. So just to be clear, I need to talk a little bit about what a hate crime is, as the term hate can be misleading. When used in a hate crime law, the word hate does not mean rage, anger, or general dislike. In this context, hate means bias or prejudice against people or groups with specific characteristics that are defined by law. At the federal level, hate crime laws include crimes committed on the basis of the victim's perceived or actual race, color, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability, which are the categories that were included in the previous slide. The crime in a hate crime is often a violent crime, such as an assault or murder, arson, vandalism, or threats to commit such crimes. It can also include graffiti, harassment, verbal slurs, printed materials, and any other activity that's directed towards a group that is considered intimidating. So once you've established that you are an eligible applicant, what are some eligible activities allowed for by the law? As you can see, the list is pretty extensive. It includes planning, equipment, security-related technology, theft control devices, training, upgrades to existing structures, which also includes some construction, vulnerability and threat assessments, and my favorite, specialty trained canines. I would also note that the law also includes what's called a catch-all phrase, that is, any other safety or security related project that enhances the safety or security of the nonprofit organization. This catch-all phrase allows for anything safety related, including paying for the costs related to security guards, which we get a lot, or other equipment not included on the technology listing here, such as bollards, window film, visitor management systems, and other items. Applicants are allowed by law to request a minimum of $5,000 to up to a maximum of $150,000 to support their security projects under the Nonprofit Security Grant Program. This chart on the screen breaks down whether or not the amount you are requesting in your grant includes what is called a non-state financial participation match. As most of you know, a match in grant world means providing a portion of your own funding to supplement your project. It's basically used to show that you're more invested in your project because you've also set aside funds to complete it. The term non-state financial participation match just means that you can't use other state funds as your match for this funding. So, for example, if you happen to get a $25,000 state grant from the PA Department of Community and Economic Development, or DCED, to pay for security-related needs, you just can't use it as a match for your $75,000 in request for PCCD's Nonprofit Security Grant Fund, as it is also state funding. You can, however, use any other funding source other than state funding, such as federal funding or private fundraising dollars or foundation dollars, to support your match. As the chart shows on the screen, if you're requesting $25,000 or less, there is no match requirement at all. Most of our applicants choose this approach, by the way. It's just easier than trying to come up with a match. But for those organizations with a little bit more capital and they have matching funds, a 33% non-state financial participation match is required if you're requesting between $25,001 to $75,000 in state funding for this grant. And if you're requesting over $75,001 to the full maximum $150,000, a 50% match is required. We recognize that this can be a bit confusing, so this information is all broken down on our website if you want to consider to study it more. And speaking of our website, that is where you need to go to apply. Typically, the application period will open following the passage of the state budget. In 2024, the application window was between July 23rd to August 27th, which was a window of about 35 days to submit your application. You'll see here that I took a screenshot of our website, which is www.pccd.pa.gov. And if you look under the Research and Child Advocacy tab, you can find the Nonprofit Security Grant Fund webpage, and it will take you directly to that page. When a solicitation is open, PCCD will also often upload a banner on the main webpage, which is shown in green on the screen above, which you can click on to take you to the appropriate page as well. Once the Nonprofit Security Grant Fund solicitation is open and it's on our webpage, you will see that we'll have a link to a SurveyMonkey platform that we use to initially gather applications. To help you prepare your application, we also include a PDF version of the survey so that you can see all the questions in advance and prepare your information in advance prior to sitting down and completing the application. We do recommend that you read everything on the webpage prior to starting your application so you can gather all the information you need. And what you will need for your initial request in the SurveyMonkey includes very simple information. First of all, we will ask you for your name, address, and the contact information of your nonprofit organization, including your employer identification number. We'll ask you for the contact information of 2 individuals associated with your organization, and we would like to stress whoever you choose to be the main contacts for your organization on your application, you should make sure that they are going to be around in the event that you would receive an award so that we can contact them to notify you of your award. You should gather information on prior security program grants or awards your organization may have received either through PCCD or through the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, PEMA, or other sources, as we do ask about prior funding. Please be prepared to draft a really short narrative. It can just be a few sentences summarizing why you're applying and what you're requesting. A basic rule of grant writing 101 is just tell us your problem or need, tell us what you're requesting, and link what you're requesting to solving your needs or problem. Justify what you're requesting against your need. Please note that any supporting documentation is optional to include as part of your application. If you want to scan individual pages of your vulnerability assessment or a physical assessment that you may have had done already, and it's relevant to your request, that is absolutely fine to include. PCCD will treat that information as completely confidential. Again, I would note that you don't need to have a vulnerability assessment completed prior to submitting an application under PCCD's Nonprofit Security Grant Fund program, but it is a helpful resource to refer to. And finally, you will need to have the best estimates you can come up with of the proposed project costs, including your match expenditures if that's applicable. It should be clear to reviewers what it is that you're requesting and for how much. Again, another Grants 101 rule: the more detailed your estimate, the better off your budget will be received. All applications are reviewed by PCCD in consultation with the Pennsylvania State Police and the Governor's Office of Homeland Security. Contrary to rumor, it is not first come, first served. We review all applications as they come in. I would note that historically, priority consideration in the application review process is given to nonprofits that indicate that their organization or membership was the victim of a hate crime and/or clearly described a credible hate crime threat to their organization. So please keep that in mind as you're applying. Geographic distribution is also taken into consideration to ensure that we distribute awards throughout the state. And finally, applicants that have received an award in a prior year are definitely still eligible to apply. However, prior awards may be taken into consideration during the review process. Applicants recommended for an award are formally approved by our commission at a quarterly meeting. After that meeting, we notify applicants yay or nay if they got funded. PCCD staff then works with the applicants to move their information into PCCD's eGrant system in order to finalize their awards so that they can receive payment. Once everything is approved by the state, grantees will submit financial reports to us to be reimbursed for expenditures. I know that it comes up time and again about fronting the funding, but there is a management directive in the Commonwealth that guides all grant funding, and its default policy is to administer grants on a reimbursement basis only. That is, you pay for it up front, and we will reimburse you on the back end. Just a reminder, these are taxpayer dollars after all, and this is just a check on the system. We recognize, however, that a lot of nonprofits, especially faith-based organizations, may not have that type of capital to outlay expenses like that. So we do have alternative processes that we can use to work with individual grantees if they have cash flow issues. If you're an organization that is in that boat, please reach out to us upon your award and we will work with you directly. Now, the final portion of the presentation is to discuss other state resources that may be out there for you to consider to support your security-based needs. As I mentioned earlier, PEMA also has a nonprofit security grant fund program. This is a federal program administered by PEMA, which is designed to provide funding for physical and cybersecurity enhancements and other security-related activities to nonprofit organizations that are at a high risk of a terrorist or other extremist attack. PEMA's program also seeks to integrate the preparedness activities of nonprofit organizations with broader state and local preparedness efforts. PEMA's grants are for 3 years, and there is apparently no match requirement. The maximum award amount request in 2024 that an applicant could come in for was $150,000. The timing of PEMA's application is technically not in conflict with PCCD's in that it usually opens in the spring. You can find all the information about their grant program on their website at pema.pa.gov. One of the caveats I have for the PEMA grant program, however, is that you must have completed a physical security or vulnerability assessment for your building as part of your application for their funding. As I mentioned earlier, you do not need an assessment as part of your application to PCCD's nonprofit grant program. But as assessments are wonderful tools and resources documenting your needs, they are very helpful to have as part of your application. The State Police does offer free and very thorough vulnerability assessments for your facilities through their Risk and Vulnerability Assessment Team, or RVAT unit. These are free, but unfortunately, because they are free, there is a tremendous backlog to receive one of their assessments. If you don't want to wait for the PSP RVAT unit and have the means to pay for an assessment, which you can use these grant funds for, PCCD does have a registry online of individuals who meet certain background expertise that qualify them to perform assessments in the state. Though it is targeted for schools, that doesn't mean that the individuals on the registry, which can be found on our School Safety and Security webpage, are limited to performing assessments in schools. This registry includes nearly 150 individuals located throughout the state that may be a resource you may want to look at for a local provider to do a professional assessment. Finally, if you can't afford an assessor or you don't want to wait for the state police, at the very least, you can use various toolkits that are out there to perform self-assessments of your facility or facilities. PCCD has one such tool up on our website that, while it is geared towards schools, you can use it to help determine your organization's safety needs. The Federal Department of Homeland Security also has similar tools for your use. To wrap things up, I do want to mention that PCCD may issue other funding opportunities from time to time that you may be interested in pursuing if you're eligible for them. I would be remiss if I didn't direct you to sign up for email notifications when funding opportunities do become available. You can do that by visiting our website at www.pccd.pa.gov and clicking on the Grant Opportunities button in the very middle of our website banner. This will take you to our subscription page, and all you need to do is enter in your email twice and you will become of our listserv that pushes out notifications when solicitations are issued. To wrap up, all the information you need about the Nonprofit Security Grant Fund program is on our website. But if you have a question, please do not hesitate to reach out by using the email to our resource account at ra.cd-mpsec-grant@pa.gov. Thank you again for listening, and we hope that this has been informative as you pursue grant funding from the Commission on Crime and Delinquency.